A radiant golden light erupted from the Nirvana Monument, instantly drawing the attention of everyone in the plaza. Even those on nearby streets couldn't help but cast bewildered glances toward it. The surging golden light captivated every gaze, storming into the Earth-class region with unstoppable momentum, directly breaking into the top 10. EngSubs, whose rank had already dropped from 9th to 11th due to Mu Hanyue and Changling's rise, was now mercilessly pushed to 12th as the golden light surged ahead. Seeing this, EngSubs' face darkened. He had heard of Mu Hanyue and Changling, and while it irked him that they surpassed him, it was still something he could grudgingly accept. But now, this, some newcomer from who knows where, had also overtaken him? At that moment, EngSubs couldn't help but wonder if the Nirvana Monument was broken. Yet, no matter how sour EngSubs' expression became, the dazzling golden light showed no sign of halting. After surpassing his name, it continued to rise, causing an uproar as it overtook even Mu Hanyue's rank. Mu Hanyue, draped in her white robes, furrowed her brows as her beautiful eyes locked onto the young figure standing before the Nirvana Monument, his hand lightly touching its surface. It seems another troublesome figure has arrived in Myriad Elephant City. Not far away, Changling, usually calm, now showed a flicker of surprise. His casual demeanor turned serious, for after surpassing Mu Hanyue, the golden light still hadn't dimmed. Instead, it was steadily rising at a deliberate pace. 7th place. A sudden roar erupted from the crowd around the Nirvana Monument. Eyes filled with astonishment as they stared at the golden light, which had now climbed to 7th place. The blood in their veins seemed to boil slightly. Such a dark horse, charging straight to the top, hadn't been seen in some time. Brother Lin Dong is amazing. Su Ro's face beamed with excitement, her large eyes brimming with admiration. To her, Su Kuei's performance had already been impressive, but compared to Lin Dong, it paled in comparison. Beside her, Su Kuei nodded enthusiastically. He had initially thought that Lin Dong reaching 10th place would already be remarkable, but he hadn't expected him to push this far, this fast. It's a bit early to get excited. Little Mink smiled faintly. He knew well Lin Dong's capabilities. If Changling could make it to 5th place, Lin Dong certainly wouldn't stop here. Hearing Little Mink's seemingly playful comment, Su Ro's face lit up even more with excitement. But Su Kuei, on the other hand, became visibly moved. He couldn't help but click his tongue. Was this guy really from a lower-tier dynasty? With strength like this, he could compete with the top warriors from the super dynasties. 6th place. Just as Little Mink finished speaking, another wave of astonishment surged from the crowd. The golden light had now effortlessly surpassed the previous 6th-ranked individual. It's moving again, heading for Changling. As soon as the exclamation fell, it was followed by another outburst. The crowd watched in disbelief as the golden light climbed higher, pushing Changling, who hadn't even had time to settle into his 5th-place spot, out of the way. Brother Changling. This person is no ordinary figure. A man standing next to Changling said solemnly, eyes locked on the scene. He certainly isn't. Changling nodded slowly, his gaze heavy as he whispered, this ancient battleground hides many formidable talents. Every so often, a dark horse like this emerges from the shadows. I wonder how far he can go. Beyond this point, the only ones left are the elite champions from the super dynasties. They say those warriors have even fought against 4th Nirvana stage experts, the man remarked. I'm curious as well. Changling lifted his head, staring at the young man's back in front of the Nirvana Monument. He wanted to see if this man, who had surpassed him, could challenge the elite champions of the super dynasties. Around the Nirvana Monument, the golden light blazed brighter. Unbeknownst to anyone, more and more people had gathered, drawn by the commotion, their gazes filled with shock as they watched the golden light continue to climb. The golden light was now closing in on the 4th name on the Earth class ranking. The once noisy area around the Nirvana Monument fell into an eerie silence as countless eyes fixed on the ascending light, their hearts pounding. No one dared to even breathe. He's surpassed it. A hoarse cry suddenly echoed, and everyone's hearts skipped a beat. They saw it too. The golden light had indeed overtaken the 4th-ranked name, claiming its spot. It's not over. But even after taking fourth place, they numbly realized the light hadn't stopped. A few couldn't help but groan at the sight. What followed was a repeat of the earlier scene. The golden light's rise wasn't rapid, but it was steady and relentless. Under the shocked and numb gazes of the crowd, it soon surpassed the third and second names. Second place in the Earth class ranking. A gentle breeze swept past, and time seemed to freeze in front of the Nirvana Monument. Countless expressions turned rigid as they stared in disbelief. No one could have imagined that a nameless newcomer could reach such heights. Those top 4 spots were held by elite champions from the Super Dynasties, all renowned figures in myriad Elephant City. Yet now, they had been easily surpassed by an unknown youth. They could only imagine the uproar this would cause once the news spread across myriad Elephant City. At this moment, everyone's breathing grew heavier, their eyes burning with fervor. They stared intently at the gleaming golden light, knowing that if it rose just one more place, it would reach the peak of the Earth class. That moment would drive the crowd wild. Under the countless rapid breaths surrounding the monument, even individuals as cold as Mu Hanyue and as composed as Chang Ling couldn't help but slowly clench their fists inside their sleeves. They knew very well that if the next scene were to unfold, it would cause a massive upheaval in the city. The golden light shimmered under the gaze of many, but did not climb further as expected. Instead, it paused strangely, and then the light began to contract, gradually transforming into 2 golden characters. Lin Dong. Sigh. As the name appeared, a collective sigh of disappointment rose from the crowd in front of the Nirvana Monument. It seemed some were disheartened that the most thrilling moment hadn't occurred. However, the disappointment was short-lived as a wave of uproar erupted again in the plaza. Countless fervent gazes turned toward Lin Dong, eager to see just who this mysterious person was who had managed to suppress the elite champions of the 3 super dynasties. Did he really have some hidden, mystical abilities? Second in the Earth class, Little Mink glanced at Lin Dong's back and furrowed his brow. He understood Lin Dong's potential well and knew that at the last moment, Lin Dong must have intentionally suppressed the surging golden light. Otherwise, he certainly had the ability to challenge for first place. Staying under the radar, are we? Little Mink smirked slyly. He immediately understood Lin Dong's caution. Though they were growing stronger, it wasn't necessary to attract too much attention in a place like this. It's always wise to hold a trump card. It could come in handy at unexpected times. EngSubs stared at the golden name hanging high above him, Lin Dong, and felt a suffocating pressure. If Lin Dong had only reached 5th or 6th place, EngSubs might have felt uneasy but not as crushed as he did now. But Lin Dong hadn't stopped at 5th or 6th. He had secured 2nd place. EngSubs wasn't foolish. He knew very well what that ranking represented. Moreover, he also understood that the youth who had managed to suppress the elite champions of the 3 super dynasties wasn't just some flash in the pan. Mu Hanyue's beautiful eyes were fixed on the tall figure standing straight as a spear. Her lips pursed slightly. A peculiar glint flashed across her eyes, not because she was attracted to him, but because this was simply the natural reaction of a woman when encountering an extraordinarily capable man. Little Mink, why don't you give it a try too? Lin Dong turned to his companions under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a warm smile on his face. Despite having just suppressed the elite champions of the super dynasties, there was no trace of arrogance in his demeanor. Yet no one dared to underestimate him anymore. Little Mink gave Lin Dong a glance, but didn't refuse. He understood well that in a place like myriad Elephant City, teeming with powerful figures, keeping a low profile would only invite endless trouble. Casually, Little Mink stepped forward and placed his hand on the cold surface of the Nirvana Monument. But before the crowd could fully shift their attention to him, brilliant golden light exploded. With a whoosh, the light surged into the top 10 in the blink of an eye, shocking everyone, and finally stopped right behind Lin Dong, rudely pushing the original 3rd place down. Then, the golden light condensed into 2 characters. Lin Mink, 3rd in the Earth class. The entire process took less than 5 seconds. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Little Mink casually dusted off his hands and walked back lazily, even before the golden light had fully faded. As Little Mink returned, Little Yin cracked a wide grin and strode forward, placing his large hand on the monument. Buzz. Under the numb gazes of the crowd, the golden light surged once again, breaking into the top 10 with unstoppable force before finally settling behind Little Mink. The light condensed once more. Lin Yin, fourth in the Earth class. The expressions of everyone froze at that moment as they stared at the three golden names high above. They couldn't help but feel dizzy. In less than 10 minutes, the second to fourth ranks of the Earth class had all changed hands. Huff. Even someone as cold as Mu Hanyue let out a soft breath at this moment. Her beautiful eyes trembled as she gazed at the three figures standing before the Nirvana Monument. To take 3 out of the top 4 spots in the Earth class, this was a feat even the 4 great super dynasties hadn't achieved in Myriad Elephant City. Yet now, these 3 strangers had done it. Who on earth are these people? Mu Hanyue's lips tightened as she wondered. She knew that Myriad Elephant City was about to become even more turbulent due to the appearance of these 3 individuals. Around the Nirvana Monument, the silence was deafening. Countless eyes were fixed on the 3 figures, everyone fully aware that once the news spread, it would cause an uproar throughout Myriad Elephant City. The top 4 spots in the Earth class had long been dominated by the elite champions of the 4 great super dynasties, and no one had been able to shake their positions for a long time. But today, Lin Dong and his companions had forced 3 of those spots to change hands. Moreover, judging from their names, it was clear that the 3 of them were closely connected, likely from the same dynasty. If that were true, the strength of their dynasty was truly astonishing. Su Kuei stood in awe, watching the scene unfold. He clicked his tongue in amazement, realizing that no matter how much he had overestimated Lin Dong, he still hadn't anticipated him reaching second place. And Little Mink and Little Yin had followed closely behind, placing third and fourth. Their strength and teamwork were truly terrifying. These 3, how do they train? They're clearly from a lower-tier dynasty, but their skills are on par with the top champions from the super dynasties, Su Kuei muttered with a bitter smile. Compared to Lin Dong and his companions, he finally understood the true meaning of the word gap. Su Ro, on the other hand, didn't think as deeply as Su Kuei. She beamed with pride at Lin Dong's exceptional performance, casting a smug glance at San, who now looked utterly defeated. This guy had been so arrogant after reaching 9th place, but now he had been pushed all the way down to 14th. Lin Dong smiled as Little Mink and Little Yin returned, nodding slightly. He knew that with Little Mink's abilities, there was no way he was content with just 3rd place. If he had wanted, he could have easily pushed into the Heaven class and crushed everyone there. But that would attract too much attention. Looking up, Lin Dong's gaze fell on the golden Nirvana Monument. Among the Earth class rankings, the 3 Lin names stood out. But after scanning those names briefly, his eyes moved upward, settling on a single, larger golden character above them. Luo Tong, first in the Earth class, Stormcloud Dynasty. A member of the Stormcloud Dynasty? Lin Dong narrowed his eyes as he looked at the name, which only appeared when someone reached first place. He hadn't expected that the one occupying the top spot in the Earth class would be from the Stormcloud Dynasty. Luo Tong is extremely powerful. Rumor has it that he's on the verge of undergoing his 4th Nirvana tribulation. If he succeeds, the Stormcloud Dynasty will gain another heavyweight expert, Su Kuei whispered from behind Lin Dong, his voice filled with awe. On the verge of his 4th Nirvana tribulation? Lin Dong smiled faintly. No wonder he could suppress the elite champions of the other 3 super dynasties. He certainly had some skill. As Lin Dong spoke, his gaze shifted toward the higher ranks of the Earth class, but they were obscured by golden light, revealing no information. The Nirvana Monument's Heaven class section can only be seen by those who break into it. Most of those figures are leaders from the super dynasties, and their strength is formidable. Lin Dong nodded slightly. It was said that only those who reached the Heaven class had the qualifications to challenge for a spot on the Nirvana Golden List. It seemed the Heaven class ranking of the Nirvana Monument carried significant weight. After watching for a while, Lin Dong withdrew his gaze and turned around, his expression playfully mocking as he looked at Sen's stiff face. So, do we qualify now? Upon hearing this, Sen's face froze. The previously arrogant experts standing behind him suddenly wilted, as if their energy had been drained, no longer daring to show even a hint of hostility. It was a joke, really. The three people standing before them were strong enough to rival the elite champions of the super dynasties. Even if they combined their forces, including EngSubs, they likely wouldn't stand a chance against Lin Dong and his companions. EngSubs' face alternated between shades of green and white. Even someone as brazen as him didn't dare to provoke them further. He forced an awkward smile before hurriedly leading his group away in a state of embarrassment. Lin Dong glanced at their retreating backs, not bothering to create any further trouble. He knew EngSubs well enough to understand that he would now know exactly whom to avoid in the future. Friends, I am Changling. Perhaps we can get to know each other if you don't mind? As EngSubs and his group slunk away, Changling, who had been observing Lin Dong and his companions closely, couldn't help but step forward. He clasped his hands in greeting with a friendly smile. Lin Dong looked at this man, who had originally secured 5th place but had been pushed down to 8th by them. Despite this, Changling's face showed no resentment. Rather, he seemed sincere in his desire to make their acquaintance. Lin Dong smiled back and returned the gesture. Lin Dong. These are my brothers, Lin Mink and Lin Yin. Taking 3 of the top 5 Earth-class spots for a single dynasty is a first in Myriad Elephant City. Brother Lin, your abilities are truly impressive. I expect you'll shine brilliantly in the upcoming 100 Dynasty War, Changling said with genuine admiration. Just luck, Lin Dong replied with a modest smile. Changling chuckled and shook his head. There was no such thing as luck in the Nirvana Monument's tests, but since Lin Dong didn't want to discuss it further, he shifted the conversation. Brother Lin, since you've come to Myriad Elephant City, I assume you're here for the Myriad auction in 2 days? Myriad auction? Lin Dong asked, a bit puzzled. The Myriad auction is one of the most attractive events in Myriad Elephant City. It happens every 2 months, and it's considered the highest level auction in the ancient battleground. After this city, the only thing left is the 100 Dynasty War in the core region. Many people come here hoping to find some treasures that can boost their strength, Su Kuei explained quietly from Lin Dong's side. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong nodded slightly. Given that Myriad Elephant City was one of the major strongholds, it wasn't surprising that countless powerful figures would gather here. It was possible that someone might discover some rare treasure within the space of the ancient battleground and bring it here for auction. If luck was on his side, he might indeed stumble upon something incredible. It's rumored that this Myriad auction will feature a heaven-tier spiritual treasure. If the 3 of you are interested, you might want to check it out. As Lin Dong's thoughts were running, a slightly cold yet melodious voice rang out. Lin Dong looked up and saw Mu Hanyue, clad in white, standing before him with her exquisite, icy beauty. Thank you for the information, Miss Mu. Lin Dong responded courteously. He knew she represented a super dynasty, and given her status, he treated her with due respect, smiling as he cupped his hands in greeting. He understood well why they were suddenly drawing so much attention, even from someone as cold as Mu Hanyue. It was because their names were now prominently displayed among the top 4 on the Nirvana Monument's Earth-class rankings. With rankings like these, even the super dynasties wouldn't easily ignore them. If these powerful factions could recruit them, it would greatly enhance their strength. Lin Dong suspected Mu Hanyue had a similar intention. Even if she couldn't recruit them, at least establishing some sort of relationship would be beneficial. Mu Hanyue nodded slightly in acknowledgement, her gaze briefly resting on Lin Dong before she turned and gracefully walked away. Lin Dong smiled as he watched her retreating figure. Not only was this woman beautiful, but she was also smart. Heh, Brother Lin, Mu Hanyue is quite the famous beauty in Myriad Elephant City, and she has the backing of the Solitary Moon Dynasty. There are plenty of people dreaming of using her to rise to power, Changling remarked with a laugh, noticing Lin Dong watching her leave. Beauty is captivating, but often out of reach, Lin Dong replied with a chuckle. Over the years, he had met many women, and in terms of beauty, none surpassed Ling Qingzhu. Even Mu Hanyue couldn't compare to her. Some might say he was indifferent, but even Ling Qingzhu hadn't been able to captivate him fully, let alone Mu Hanyue. Brother Lin, your performance today was outstanding. It's likely you've caught the attention of the super dynasties, and they may be planning to recruit you, Changling said, his tone casual yet hinting at deeper implications. The three of us value our freedom. We're not interested in mingling with those super dynasties, Lin Dong replied nonchalantly. Chang Ling, being astute, let out a quiet breath of relief upon hearing this. The strength of Lin Dong's group was immense, and if they were recruited by the super dynasties, it wouldn't be good news for him. The two chatted for a while longer before Chang Ling finally took his leave. Lin Dong and his group, meanwhile, didn't linger and soon left the plaza, drawing countless stares as they departed. Brother Su Kuei, we might check out that auction in 2 days, Lin Dong said with a smile as they walked away. Sure, I'll make the arrangements, Su Kuei nodded. Having spent some time in Myriad Elephant City, he was more familiar with the place than Lin Dong and his group, so it was only fitting that he handled the details. Are you actually interested in the auction? Little Mink asked lazily. The Heaven-tier spiritual treasure is definitely something worth checking out. Such an item possesses immense power and, in the hands of the wrong person, could become a deadly weapon. Lin Dong nodded slightly, his voice low. A Heaven-tier spiritual treasure, something he hadn't even encountered in the ancient treasure troves, was now appearing at an auction here. He couldn't help but wonder where such an item had come from. It was clear that this Heaven-tier spiritual treasure would spark a bloody battle in Myriad Elephant City. As night descended, it enveloped the massive city, but the hustle and excitement within did not diminish in the slightest. On the contrary, under the contrast of the dark sky, the city seemed even more vibrant and heated. Lin Dong and his group found a somewhat quieter courtyard in the city to rest temporarily. Myriad Elephant City was enormous, and despite the influx of powerful individuals from all directions, the city didn't feel crowded at all. As expected, after their performance at the Nirvana Monument, the city's discussions had shifted entirely to the three of them. Various dynasties were trying to gather information about them. The fact that 3 of the top 4 Earth-class spots had changed hands was clearly causing quite a stir in the city. 3 individuals strong enough to rival the champions of the super dynasties were certainly worth recruiting by any dynasty. In the courtyard, Lin Dong and the others sat quietly, their gazes occasionally sweeping the distant night. They could faintly sense many prying eyes watching them from the shadows. These people are really getting on my nerves, Lin Dong said with a wry smile, shaking his head. Well, it's only natural. What you did today was too shocking, so it's normal for them to pay attention, Su Kuei chuckled. Knowing the strength of Lin Dong and his companions had put him at ease. In his mind, the Stormcloud dynasty might be powerful, but Lin Dong's group wasn't to be trifled with either. With their protection, Su Ro would surely be safer. Still, this protection made him feel a bit uneasy. In truth, he hadn't known Lin Dong and his companions for long, yet they had saved him and were willing to offend the Stormcloud dynasty for their sake. It was something Su Kuei found hard to believe. Lin Dong glanced at Su Kuei, who had fallen silent, noting the honest expression on his rugged face. He then looked at Su Ro and said gently, "Brother Su, you don't need to overthink this. In this world, there are no friends or protectors without reason. You can consider it as us recognizing Su Ro's potential and lending her a hand. I'm sure you understand that if she can control the mysterious power within her, she'll become incredibly strong. In other words, if the super sects were to discover the immense power hidden in Su Ro, they would immediately take her in as a disciple. Her future would be incredibly bright. This world is like that. Sometimes, a bit of fortune can be more important than 9 parts of effort." Lin Dong sighed softly as he finished. The ancient battleground was filled with geniuses who fought fiercely to gain the favor of the super sects, only to fall to brutal competition. Yet, Su Ro, through a stroke of fortune, had a rare opportunity to be noticed by the super sections. It was something that could easily stir up feelings of unease or envy in others. Su Kuei blinked, taking a moment before breaking into a grin and nodding heavily. You shouldn't look down on yourself either. True, good fortune can help someone avoid detours and smooth their path, but it's not always a good thing. The top experts who stand tall in this world didn't rely solely on fortune to get there. Little Mink suddenly spoke up, his tone calm. Lin Dong smiled but didn't dwell further on the subject. He turned his gaze toward Su Ro and asked, "Do you have a way to help Su Ro control her power?" Upon hearing this, both Su Kuei and Su Ro looked anxiously toward Little Mink, especially Su Ro, who had long been troubled by the power within her. Little Mink fell into a brief moment of contemplation before replying, "I've been examining her body over time. The spiritual imprint left within that power has weakened significantly due to the passage of time. This is good news for her. However, controlling it is still a bit tricky." Hearing this, a hint of disappointment appeared on Su Ro's face. "It's tricky, but it's not impossible, right?" Lin Dong asked, familiar with Little Mink's ways. He knew that if Little Mink hadn't outright denied it, then there was likely a solution. "There is," Little Mink nodded. "But it requires some rather unique materials, which we don't have right now. However, with the auction in 2 days, we might be able to acquire what we need. If we do, I can help her control some of the power within her. It won't be complete control, but even a partial grasp of it would provide her with significant combat strength." "Really?" Su Kuei exclaimed in joy. "Brother Mink is amazing." Su Ro's face lit up with joy, and if it weren't for her sense of propriety, she might have rushed forward to hug him out of gratitude. "Don't get too excited just yet. That power doesn't truly belong to you. Even if you can control some of it, there will be significant limitations," Little Mink said lazily. "Also, you need to toughen up your personality. If you're planning to join us in the 100 Dynasty War, you're going to have to get used to bloodshed. You may even need to take lives. If you hesitate when the time comes, you could end up dragging us down." Little Mink's casual tone held a sharp edge, causing Su Ro's joyful expression to fade somewhat. Su Kuei let out a bitter laugh and glanced at Su Ro, whose small hands had tightened into fists. He knew that his sister's gentle and meek nature made her as defenseless as a lamb in a pack of wolves. Lin Dong pursed his lips as he looked at Su Ro biting her lip. He couldn't help but feel a little reluctant. For someone her age, being forced into such a brutal competition was undoubtedly difficult. "Don't worry, Brother Mink. I won't drag you down when the time comes," Su Ro said. Her small fists clenched tightly. After a brief pause, she lifted her head, a touch of determination crossing her delicate features, clearly spurred on by Little Mink's words. Little Mink scratched his nose and looked at the strange expressions on Lin Dong and Su Kuei's faces. He sighed and muttered, "Damn it. Why am I always the one who has to be the bad guy?" Just as Little Mink was grumbling, his brow furrowed suddenly. At the same moment, Lin Dong slowly lifted his head, his eyes scanning the darkness above them. "Since you're here, show yourself. Sneaking around is hardly the act of an honorable person." Nearby, Little Yin, who had been meditating with his eyes closed, also opened them. With a clenched fist, a black scaled iron rod appeared in his hand. "Heh!" As expected of someone ranked second in the Earth class, a faint chuckle echoed from the sky. The darkness seemed to ripple, and a gray figure emerged, eerily hovering above the courtyard. Lin Dong's gaze sharpened as it landed on the figure. A man dressed in gray, with an unremarkable face. His appearance wasn't striking, but his hands, pale and thin, extended from his sleeves. There was a faint glint of cold light at his fingertips. However, despite his unremarkable appearance, this seemingly ordinary man caused Lin Dong to narrow his eyes slightly, as he could sense a faint yet palpable aura of danger emanating from him. "Luo Tong?" Su Kuei's face changed dramatically upon seeing the figure, and he blurted out the name in shock. "Luo Tong, the first in the Earth class, huh?" Lin Dong chuckled, realizing why this man had such an imposing presence. It turned out he wasn't just an ordinary person. "We've attracted a lot of attention from the dynasties, but you're the first to show up," Lin Dong said with a light smile. "With all the commotion you've caused, it's hard not to notice," Luo Tong replied indifferently, his figure descending until he landed atop the courtyard wall. "Tell me, what brings you here?" Lin Dong asked calmly. "You killed Yenemo and the others, didn't you?" Luo Tong stared intently at Lin Dong's face, his voice quiet yet filled with an underlying menace. "Yeah," Lin Dong replied unexpectedly, with an air of frankness. Since he had already brought Su Kuei and Su Ro to Myriad Elephant City, he knew the Stormcloud dynasty would eventually track him down. They were members of the Stormcloud dynasty. "You shouldn't have acted against them," Luo Tong said slowly, his voice carrying an unquestionable authority. There's no one we're not allowed to act against, little Mink replied lazily. Luo Tong's eyes grew cold, and a sharp, icy gleam appeared on his pale fingers as he glared at the trio. You should know that this girl belongs to the Stormcloud dynasty. Lin Dong frowned slightly. I believe our presence here in Myriad Elephant City should make things clear. If you're only here to say this, then you can leave. I'm here to deliver a message from the Stormcloud dynasty. The three of you are quite capable, and if you agree to join our dynasty, we will ensure your smooth entry into a super sect. However, the condition is that you must hand the girl over to us, Luo Tong said, his eyes narrowing. He then casually slashed the air with his finger, causing the branches above Lin Dong's head to slice cleanly in half. I won't waste time with empty threats. I hope you'll make the right decision. Otherwise, you may not make it out of this city. Sacrificing your future for someone irrelevant wouldn't be wise, he added, his voice cold and filled with a clear warning. Lin Dong lightly tapped his fingers on the back of the chair as his eyes calmly observed the falling fragments of the branch, the cut as smooth as a mirror. You've delivered your message. How we choose to proceed is up to us. I hope you'll have our answer by tomorrow, Luo Tong said, preparing to turn and leave. There's no need to wait until tomorrow, Lin Dong's soft voice interrupted, causing Luo Tong to pause and look back at him. I'll give you my answer right now. Lin Dong raised his head, a bright but chilling smile gradually forming on his face. Seeing the smile on Lin Dong's face, a flicker of icy intent crept into Luo Tong's eyes. He stared at Lin Dong and slowly spoke in a voice colder than ice. You're an arrogant brat who doesn't know his place. As the night deepened, the air above the courtyard suddenly turned bone-chilling. The atmosphere felt as if cold, razor-sharp blades were slicing through the air, sending a shiver through anyone present. Lin Dong lifted his gaze to the gray-robed Luo Tong, who now exuded a sharp, blade-like aura. At this moment, Luo Tong seemed like an unsheathed sword, his presence so piercing it was almost painful. To be honest, I do think I tend to be a bit reckless sometimes. But ever since I entered this battleground, I've been walking this reckless path, and it's brought me here, Lin Dong said with a smile. Perhaps this is where your journey ends, Luo Tong replied slowly. As he spoke, the sharp aura surrounding him intensified. At his fingertips, faint but lethal glimmers of cold light began to gather. I imagine most of Myriad Elephant City's forces are paying attention to this courtyard tonight. Since you've taken the lead, I'll take this opportunity to send them all a message, Lin Dong said, his gaze sweeping the night sky. He could sense that many were watching them from various hidden corners of the city. No doubt some were considering recruiting them, and Lin Dong intended to give them a clear response. At that moment, Little Yin rose from the ground, his large frame exuding an overwhelming pressure. Threads of ferocious killing intent began to emanate from his body, causing even Luo Tong's eyes to narrow slightly. Let Lin Dong handle it, Little Mink said lazily, waving his hand dismissively as he lounged in his seat. He hadn't bothered to move an inch since the confrontation began, and after an initial glance at Luo Tong, he had completely withdrawn his attention. Su Kuei glanced at Little Mink. Over time, he had come to understand Lin Dong and his companions much better. Among the three, Lin Dong always seemed to have an endless supply of tricks, making it hard to gauge his full strength. Little Yin was the most ferocious, and once he started fighting, the overwhelming killing intent he unleashed was enough to shake anyone's spirit. As for Little Mink, he remained the most enigmatic of the trio, always relaxed and carefree, showing no fear even when facing the might of a super dynasty. This distinctive trio, Su Kuei mused, would likely become the most dazzling dark horses in the 100 Dynasty War. At Little Mink's words, Little Yin hesitated briefly. After seeing Lin Dong nod slightly, he sat back down, though his body remained tense, ready to strike at any moment like a fierce tiger poised to attack. Are you facing me alone? Luo Tong asked as he lightly slashed the air again, causing it to tear open. He stared at Lin Dong and added, There's only one rank between second and first, but I think you don't understand just how vast that gap is. One is enough to deal with you, Lin Dong replied with a smile. In the next instant, his gaze sharpened, his body trembled slightly, and brilliant golden light erupted from him, forming a radiant golden shield. As the golden protective shield appeared, faint metallic sounds echoed, and sparks flickered on its surface. It was clear that some sort of invisible attack was silently trying to erode Lin Dong. Lin Dong's lips curled slightly, and his eyes gradually turned cold. With a swift movement, he shot forward like a black shadow, fast as lightning. In an instant, Lin Dong appeared in front of Luo Tong. With a powerful step forward, a violent surge of primordial energy erupted around him, condensing into a massive golden elephant. Heaven-crushing holy elephant charge. The golden elephant encased Lin Dong, charging toward Luo Tong with the force of an unstoppable battering ram, intent on crashing through everything in its path. Seeing Lin Dong's ferocious attack, Luo Tong's eyes narrowed. He stepped back slightly, his fingers forming a sword-like gesture, and the sharp aura surrounding him erupted fully. Spiritual sword finger. Swish. From Luo Tong's fingertips, a fierce energy surged forth, forming a massive deep green sword, tens of meters long. The sword shimmered with a cold gleam as it slashed down ferociously, cutting through the night sky and crashing toward the golden elephant. Clang. The clash between the two forces produced a sharp, ringing sound that spread across the air like a shockwave, piercing the ears of everyone present. Now, let me show you the difference between first and second place. Luo Tong's eyes gleamed coldly as he let out a fierce shout. In an instant, an overwhelming surge of primordial energy burst from his body, far exceeding that of a third Nirvana stage expert. Luo Tong had clearly passed the fourth Nirvana tribulation, reaching the fourth Nirvana stage. Throughout the night, those watching from the shadows were shocked, realizing for the first time that Luo Tong had successfully passed his fourth tribulation, which meant the power of the Stormcloud dynasty had just increased significantly. Crack. The sharpness of the sword's energy intensified as Luo Tong's primordial energy surged. Cracks began to appear on the surface of the golden elephant, and with a loud bang, it shattered completely. As the golden light exploded, a figure within became faintly visible. Sword's sovereign finger, cleaving mountains. Luo Tong showed no mercy. After breaking Lin Dong's attack, he pressed on without hesitation, his eyes growing even colder. His fingers formed another seal, and from a distance, he slashed toward Lin Dong. Boom! An indescribably fierce energy condensed at Luo Tong's fingertips, the sharpness of which caused chills to run down the spines of the onlookers. The energy gathered rapidly, and within moments, a massive dark gold sword appeared in the air, accompanied by the faint image of a sword sovereign. With the appearance of this phantom, the dark gold sword's momentum surged, as if it had gained sentience. The terrifying sharpness of the energy made even the strongest third Nirvana stage experts shudder. They knew they wouldn't stand a chance against this lethal strike from Luo Tong. The Earth-class first place was no empty title. Lin Dong, dying under my spiritual martial art is not disgraceful. This is the end of your journey in the ancient battleground. Luo Tong's voice was as cold as ice as it echoed through the night. Without giving Lin Dong a chance to respond, his fingers sliced through the air, and the massive golden sword, with mountain-splitting power, descended toward Lin Dong. Whoosh! The massive sword swept down, and the buildings below it instantly exploded and crumbled into tiny fragments, the cuts as smooth as a mirror. The sword's speed was incredibly fast. In a flash, it crossed the night sky and, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, slashed down directly onto Lin Dong's figure. It's over. The same thought crossed the minds of everyone watching. Luo Tong's strike was powerful enough to instantly kill any third Nirvana stage expert. There was no way the Nirvana golden body could withstand such an attack. Clang! The golden sword struck, but just as everyone expected Lin Dong to be severely injured, a crisp metallic sound rang out from the swirling golden light. In the next moment, an unbelievably powerful energy wave erupted from the spot. Dazzling light once again exploded from Lin Dong's figure, but this time, it wasn't golden. It was a strange, azure light. The sudden burst of azure light in the darkness captured everyone's attention. All eyes, including Luo Tong's, turned toward it, and then they widened in shock. The azure light condensed into a protective shield, and within that shield, a massive dragon silhouette coiled, exuding an overwhelming pressure that filled the air, sending chills through many onlookers. The enormous golden sword had been caught in the dragon's maw, unable to advance any further. The sharp energy that had surrounded the sword was completely blocked. Luo Tong's killing blow had been stopped in its tracks by Lin Dong. Gasping sounds rippled through the night as the crowd struggled to comprehend the scene before them. Within the azure light, Lin Dong slowly raised his head, and as he lifted his hand, his arm became covered in fine, azure dragon scales. An extraordinary and powerful aura began to radiate from him. Azure Dragon Bite. Lin Dong's scaled hand clenched tightly, and the dragon wrapped around the azure shield bit down fiercely. Boom! In the stillness of the night, a clear, shattering sound rang out. The massive golden sword, which had once possessed such terrifying sharpness, exploded into countless fragments under the watchful, stunned eyes of the onlookers. To end me? You're far from qualified. Lin Dong's cold voice reverberated through the night, carrying with it a bone-chilling coldness.